My name is Jerry Gill. Today is May 8, 2010. I'm visiting with Steve Adams at Walter Adams' home here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Steve, this got to be an exciting time for you. Your son Travis is graduating. This is your second son now you've had to graduate from Oklahoma State?
It is, second one, and as I like to say, I made my last tuition payment.
One parent told me you're going to get a raise here pretty quickly.
Yeah.
A good raise.
It's been worth it, though.
Good. Well, Steve, sort of set in a historical context, you're a member of the Adams family, which is historically significant to Oklahoma State University, and really into Stillwater in the state of Oklahoma. Your grandfather, James Homer Adams, and his brother Arthur were in the first graduating class at Oklahoma State University in 1896. Your great-grandfather, William Henry Harrison Adams, was claimed land, which we're on part of that property right here today, in the land run of 1889. So he was an 89er, and he actually surveyed the original town site for Stillwater. So what a tradition. You must be proud of that.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, growing up, you just kind of heard some of the stories, and you never thought too much about it. That was just who we were and what we did. And so when I came to school here, it was kind of neat to be able to say, well, there's Adams Street, and that's named after my family.
Well, you know, Steve, how much do you know about the family history? Have you recorded quite a bit of that?
I've read most of the things that B.B. Chapman wrote. I've read some of his books and a lot of the just the things that have been written, things that have appeared in the newspapers over the years. So I'm pretty familiar with most of it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, James Homer was your grandfather. Did you ever know him? Had he already deceased?
No, he had passed away probably about 3 years before I was born.
What do you know about him, Steve?
Well, I know that after they graduated, he and Arthur, one of the things they did is they went into business together in the oil business, and I don't think they struck it rich, but I can tell you that I get a little check about 3 or 4 times a year from an oil well in Ardmore or a gas well in Ardmore that he had gotten the rights to. So, you know, there was a little bit that, but you know, from that standpoint. And then later on, I think he actually worked at the university. One of my dad's cousins, I remember hearing her say that he really helped her, you know, get through, you know, and help, you know, as far as when she was going to school here in the 30s and 40s. So that's what I know.
Well, your grandfather and his brother Arthur were active in the OSU Alumni Association at that time, called the Former Student Association. They were both past presidents, Former Student Association. Did your father ever talk about times that he went up to Stillwater with his dad, with your granddad? Well,
no, not a lot. And I'm just trying to think. I know that when my dad was in school here, which was like 1929 to 1933, you know, I assume that there are a lot of people on campus that knew who his dad was, type of thing. But I don't really remember a lot my dad talking specifically about that.
Well, you're talking about your grandfather and his brother going to business together. Yeah. Were they a lot alike? Do you remember what the personalities I heard the family talk about?
Well, you know, I know that, you know, there were 4 brothers, and 2 of them stayed on the land here and farmed, and I don't think either one of them had any interest in farming. So from that standpoint, I guess they were a little bit alike, that they would rather, you know, try some other things besides staying on the farm, so to speak.
I heard that Arthur was maybe more sort of the salesman type.
But no, that could be, yeah.
Did your dad share any special memories of his father with you that you recall, family stories and picked up?
You know, my father's actually, my grandfather was living with my mom and dad when he passed away. And, you know, my older brothers would actually have some you know, actual remembrances of him, you know, that I certainly don't have. But my dad would talk about his dad occasionally. You know, he didn't talk about it a lot, but you know, just some things about being involved in the land run and going to you know, here as in that first class, and then you know, just some snippets of stories, you know, things that they did afterwards.
Didn't your grandfather, if I recall, James Homer, didn't he make the run with his father?
Yeah.
Is that right?
All 4 of the brothers did, and James Homer was only about 10 years old at that time. So Arthur would have been about 12. I think there's about 2 years difference between them. And so it was, my great-grandfather, William Henry Harrison Adams, and the 4 brothers. The stories I have always heard is they all made the run together. And that's what my uncle has told me, Bob Adams, which you've talked to.
Is your family's OSU history and the legacy of their OSU involvement, is that a source of pride to you and your family members?
Well, it to me it really is, and it's one of those things that when you're a student here, maybe you don't think as much about it. I don't think either of my boys, really thought as much about that heritage or that history when they were here, but they heard it from me, so they knew about it. And it's interesting. Years ago, when I started school here in '71, in the student union, before it was all renovated and all, there was a little corner you'd walk around, and they had some old pictures there on one of those sheets that you just kind of turn the pages, and you could sit there and look at it. And there were some pictures of the first graduating class. And occasionally I'd walk through there with one of my friends and say, "Hey, look, there's my grandfather." And they'd look at it and say, "Okay," and I'd say, "Okay," and that was it. That's
Thought maybe you're pulling their leg or something.
Yeah. And so that was. When you're here, again, I don't think it's not on your mind every day type of thing. But then later on, you start to think about it and you reflect on it and you realize, that really is pretty cool. I mean, I don't remember going around just telling people my grandfather was in the first class.
Well, did any of your faculty members in the administration know that your relationship and your dad?
I just, I never brought it up. I never thought. I remember one time there was some kind of reception, and my mom and dad came up, and Robert Calm was the president at the time, and when we went through, my father made a point of, mentioning that to him, and I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. And then several years ago down in Lawton, when Dr. Schmedley was down there for an event, I went through and I said, well, my dad used to do this, so now I'm going to do it. my grandfather was in the first class.
All right.
So, and then he mentioned it in his speech when he was talking to everyone, so that was kind of neat.
Steve, occasionally the Adams family gets together for reunions. Have you attended some of those?
Oh, almost every one of them. It's so much fun. And the first one that we had, I don't know, about 15 years ago now at Angel Fire, New Mexico, was so much fun just to meet the other areas of the family that at the time, even Walter and Diane here, we did not know. I remember when I was a freshman, I drove down Adams. I knew that the Adams farm had been on Adams Street, or that's where. So I drove down Adams Street, and it stopped at 12th, and there was a gravel road, and I just thought, well, okay, I guess that's where the farm was, and turned around, and that was the end of it. If I would have just turned left and knocked on the first door, I would have been talking to one of my relatives. I just didn't know it at the time, and my dad probably didn't even realize that they were still here. And so when the two, Arthur's family got together with our family to put that #1 diploma back in the library. That's when I was in graduate school, so that would have been about 85, 86. That was the first time when I got to meet some of the people on that side of the family. And then right after that, we had that family reunion in Angel Fire. And so that was, that really was kind of what spurred a lot of that. It was pretty neat. How
often has the family met?
Well, we've met, for a while they were going about every 5 years. And so we had just this last year in Dallas. And so it had been about maybe 7 years since that last one. So, but it was a great time.
You got me some good stories, Steve. You got some favorite stories you heard at the reunions about some of the family members?
Well, I guess there's nothing that really just comes right to mind. Some of the things that, and I guess it was some of Art's family had a place out in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I remember my mom and dad talking about going out there, and then to just be able to meet some of those people that were their siblings or their parents that were involved in that, and being able to meet them, and it was just really neat, from my standpoint.
Well, in every family, there's characters, personalities. Some of you, and I'll throw one in. Bob would be your uncle. Is that right? Yeah. Great guy, but could you share some characters in your family?
Well, you mentioned Bob, and he's you mentioned he's a character, to me, he was almost like a second dad, He's just, and he was, growing up, I only had one aunt and uncle, and that was Bob and Pat. And so we got to spend a lot of time, at their house when we were kids growing up. And but meeting the other side of the family, and we were talking about Art and Adams and Art Roberts, and it's two guys that get together, and there's a lot of tall tales that get told at that particular point in time as well. But
I can attest to that. Both of them.
Well, I think my son Travis is kind of a character at times too. So there's probably a lot of characters in the Adams family.
Well, you're talking about Bob. It's incredible that Bob's father was James Homer in that first graduating class. So he's still got living son of the first graduating class. That has got to be phenomenal when you think about it, isn't it?
Well, it is, and people don't realize that. When my grandfather graduated, he was probably 19 years old when he graduated from A&M. Yeah, and so my brother and I have had this conversation. Did they not have to finish high school? And high school wasn't a big requirement for a lot of kids, certainly back then. And so when they started the college, he was 13 or 14, and it's like when he signed up to do somewhere in that age frame, So he was very young, and then my uncle was the youngest child, and he's lived to be a pretty good age. So it is pretty amazing that he is still alive. The only second generation from that.
You think about James Homer, as I recall, and I'm asking this question for you to verify the story. Okay. Arthur was sick on the day that on enrollment day when they enrolled for college, and so James Homer, his brother, was there, and because he went by Homer, but so say Homer was there. They registered in alphabetical order. So I guess technically your grandfather was the first enrollee at Oklahoma State University.
He was the first one to enroll, so he was the first student, but he was the second one to graduate. Because Arthur, when they graduated, they also graduated alphabetically.
Right.
So Arthur graduated first, and then my grandfather.
What a super legacy. I mean, the first enrollee at Oklahoma State University and the second graduate of Oklahoma State University.
Well, and what's amazing when you think about it, the university has those diplomas as well, in hand, where, how many universities can say they still have their first diplomas they handed out,
That's great.
So
it's got to be great.
It is a great legacy.
Steve, let me sort of back up a minute and kind of get a sense of you and where you, a little bit about maybe where you grew up, a little bit about your family, your parents. Can you share some of that story with us?
Well, we were born and raised in Oklahoma City. I was the youngest of 5 kids, and of the 5, 4 spent some time at OSU. My sister graduated with her bachelor's degree. My brother got a master's here, and another brother was actually working on a PhD before he passed away. So of the 5, 4 of us attended OSU.
So Tony graduated. Was your sister, Antoinette, better known as Tony?
Sonnenfeld, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we call it
and
Tony.
now it was
then Jerry,
James or Jim, the oldest?
My oldest brother, Jim, who's James Homer III, is the only one that did not attend OSU. But there's a little funny story about that, because, when OSU started, the president of the University at the time said he wanted OSU to be considered the Princeton of the Plains.
Yes. Well,
my oldest brother, Jim, went to Princeton. So I'm always kidding him that he got to go to the OSU of the East. So that's his connection to Oklahoma State. And then my brother Jerry got his master's in physics here after attending MIT. So
did his undergraduate work at MIT?
Yeah, yes. And then he came here.
Then he wanted to come to a real strong engineering program and get his master's, right?
Yeah. He got in physics. And see, that was really my first introduction to the university, is my mom and I would come up when my brother was going to school here. And that's when I really started, walking around on campus, coming up for a football game now and again or something like that, or just going to see my brother and going out to eat, going to the student union and those kinds of things. So I always felt like I was, and then when my sister was here a couple years before I was, same thing, we came up for ball games, and so I always felt I was comfortable with the campus long before I got here.
That's great. That's super. So you grew up in Oklahoma City. What high school did you go to, Steve?
Well, I actually graduated from Putnam City High School in 1971, and here's another funny story. At the time, it was probably the largest high school in the state. And I can remember being in a class my freshman year and meeting someone I went to high school with, and I had never met them before. So, but then I also met a lot of other people that I had gone to high school with and knew really well. So that was kind of nice.
Well, normally this when I'd ask you, what influenced you to go to Oklahoma State University? But I think I know the answer.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot. I only applied to 2 schools, and that was OSU and the University of Tulsa. And my mother made it very clear to me because, of the 5 kids, my sister, as far as undergraduate, was the only other one that had gone to OSU. And she made it clear, that if I wanted to go to Tulsa, that was certainly fine with her. Yeah. She didn't want to, but this is just where I just always wanted to be, and knew this is where I'd come.
So it wasn't like you didn't have a choice, but
I did. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I had a choice, but choice was made long beforehand.
Super.
So
what? So you rolled in the fall of
1971.
71. Okay.
And I came for 1 year, and I actually dropped out for 2 years.
Okay.
And I went to work at a radio station in Idabel, Oklahoma. I was going to be in radio and TV major, and I thought, well, here's an opportunity to find out if I'm really going to like this. And so I went to work down there, and then for 2 years, and then I came back to OSU and finished up my degree then.
So you were in journalism broadcast major?
Yes, I was radio TV. At the time we called it radio TV film. Wasn't a lot of film, but that's what it was. And so, and at the time, a lot of people don't realize this, OSU had one of the strongest radio broadcasting programs in the country. There was a executive from CBS had told one of our instructors we were probably one of the top 5 radio programs in the country. And it was very unique in that we had a radio station on campus, not KOSU, but we had a student station, KVRO, that was a commercial radio station. Most campus radio stations are non-commercial. So a lot of the students got the opportunity to sell advertising. And that's where station managers come from, usually is through the advertising ranks. And so, and I got involved in that and selling advertising. I worked at KVRO doing news, and then I sold advertising for them. And so when I graduated, I got into broadcast sales and ended up managing radio stations in Fort Myers, Florida for a while. So that was always my background, was being in radio.
Well, were there, of course, going to school and doing all those activities took a lot of your time. Were you involved in any other organizations or activities that you remember?
Well, KVRO was our activity.
I mean,
if you worked at the radio station, you really kind of had a part-time job working at the radio station, either on air as an announcer or in the news department or selling advertising, something like that. So that was pretty much the extent. And Alpha Epsilon Rho was Honorary Broadcasting Society, and I was a member of that.
Were there some instructors you recall?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Jim Ray, who I still keep in touch with. He lives in Tulsa now. And, we had an instructor, Dwayne Smith. Now, he was a character. And, but, he knew a lot and taught it to us. The guy running the radio station at the time was Dick Ralston, did a good job. And then Ed Paulin, who ran KOSU, was the first station manager at KOSU. Was one of our instructors as well, and I knew Ed real well.
He had to come in from Kentucky, is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Someone in that.
He just knew some play-by-play of Kentucky Wildcats.
He had done some play. He had done a lot of sports broadcasting and as well. Yeah.
What about favorite campus hangouts? Other than the radio station.
Well, I tell you, my best friend and roommate got me going to the library every night to study. And it was because someone got him doing it his sophomore year. So when I came back to OSU, he was a senior and I was a sophomore, and we were living together. And, every day we'd eat dinner and then we'd head to the library and study till almost 10 o'clock.
Did you live on campus?
Not after that first year. We always lived off campus. And then
where'd you live that first year?
Well, we lived the first year on campus. I lived in Kerr Hall, and then lived north of the football stadium, and then lived in Maple 500, which is just a straight shot to the journalism broadcasting building. At that particular time.
Was it a different feel for you the second time around? Of course, as a freshman right out of high school, and that freshman year, and then you come back 2 years later.
Wasn't a big difference, in that time, just because there's still a lot of people there that I knew, but. Plus, the fact that I was in an area that I now had some professional experience made me look at things a little different as well.
And What brought you back? You felt like to be successful in your career, you needed to get your degree.
Yeah, that was always my plan. That was always my intent to graduate and finish the degree. When I came back, now when I get my master's, started back 8 years later. You know, it was a different situation, a little different feel, but you know, because I wasn't living in town anymore, I was driving from Guthrie every day and so on. But I didn't see big changes, you know, even in that 8-year span.
You know, when you're on campus, did you ever walk the historic Old Central and think about, gosh, I mean, Art and Granddad, you know,
Sure.
were some of the first students to walk through this.
You know, when I was here as an undergrad, you know, Old Central was closed. You know, you didn't go in, couldn't get in. Although my senior year when we beat OU down in Norman, somebody got up into that bell tower and rang the bell. So that was pretty exciting because, you know, we were going down to the Strip, and all of a sudden we heard that bell ring, and we looked up, there was a guy sitting in that cupola. You know, I don't know what he was ringing, hitting it with, but there was a bell up there, and he was ringing it. So that was pretty neat. But yeah, always since it was closed, and then in the summer of about '75, you know, a tornado came through, and it probably know took out a big chunk of Old Central out one side of the
took off the cupola.
Yeah, on the side took out about a third of the wall, and they were talking about maybe closing it down, and we were going to tearing it down. I said no, and so they rebuilt it. You can actually see, if you look real close, you can see the difference in the brick line where they had to re-brick that after that tornado.
Have you been to it since they completed the renovation on it?
Well, yeah, I have been in it several times, and when they reenacted the first graduation ceremony, of course, we were there, and then, but not in the last couple of years. I haven't been to.
They just did that second renovation, about a $6 million renovation, just finished a year ago.
Have not seen it
It's
since.
Beautiful. We need to go through.
Oh well.
Great. So you graduated in OSU what year?
In December of '76.
76, and then you got your master's in
December of '86, exactly
86.
10 years later. Yeah, in mass communication, and I will tell you that one of my classes, at least for a few weeks, Garth Brooks was enrolled in graduate school. A lot of people don't know that he actually went to graduate school. Not for a very long time. You could count the weeks, but he was enrolled.
He had another career in mind, didn't he?
Yeah, he was a little bit more successful than the rest of us.
As you look back on your years at Oklahoma State, Steve, what were some special memories for you?
Well, just the being on campus, you know, as we always talk about how, you know, it's the best time of your life, and it really was. Going to ball games, you know, before they renovated Gallagher, going to wrestling matches and the basketball games, and I saw an OU-OSU wrestling match. I think a riot was going to break out. In fact, it sort of did for a little bit, and then they finally calmed it all down, and OSU won, and it just got so loud in there when there was only held 6,700 people, and some basketball games. And
there'd be about 8,000 in there, though.
Yeah,
only held 67.
Yeah, there'd be more than that in there. So just going to those games was so much fun, and then just you know, when I came back to school, and my now wife was also a student, so you know, we were able to do a lot of things together, and that was kind of neat as well.
That was when you came back 2 years later.
Yeah.
And that was Becky.
Becky. Yeah.
Where did Becky grow up?
Well, her dad was a Methodist minister, so she grew up
A lot of
all around the
places.
state.
Yeah, I got
I
you.
met her when I was in Idabel, and then she graduated from high school there and had come to OSU as well. So so that was kind of fun to be together. And then we were married the year before I graduated. So
Well, Steve, what kind of think back on your career? Could you just highlight some of your things you've done since you left Oklahoma State? You mentioned a couple of them. If you could share them with us.
Well, I worked in radio as selling advertising, and we went to Florida. Worked for a station down there for about 5 years, and was a salesman, then became a national sales manager, and then was the station manager for a while. Then we wanted to come back to Oklahoma, so I did, and worked at a couple of radio stations in Oklahoma City, and was running the radio station in Guthrie, and decided I needed something better.
Hours were a little long.
Yeah, the hours long and the pay was low, and so I decided to come back and get a master's, and got a job at KSPI for the 2 years that I was here working on my master's.
Were you commuting from Guthrie at that time?
I was commuting from Guthrie, and so between going to school and working at the radio station, I was coming 7 days a week from Guthrie. And when I finished the master's, I decided when I get into it, I'd like to teach, and I got a great opportunity at Cameron University down in Lawton, and I've now been there for 23 years.
23 years?
23
Wow.
years. And shortly after, one of the radio stations is owned by the guy that I worked with on campus. We went to school together, and so he hires me to do play-by-play on the radio, his radio station down there. And so I've been doing that for about 18 years, doing play-by-play on the radio.
Are you a big sports fan?
I'm a huge sports fan.
That's good. What have you seen the Adams Family exhibit in the new ConocoPhillips Alumni Center?
Well, yeah. In fact, there's a big family photo in there from one of our family reunions, the first one we had here in Stillwater, and so we're all in there, and that's really neat. And there's a lovely picture of my mother in there, which I just love dearly, and and my dad, which of course my mom didn't go here, but the fact that they included that, we really like that. And so yeah, that's kind of a. And again, I think Travis has kind of done the same thing to his friends. Says, my picture's in there. He kind of has to drag them in to show them. Because he was probably about 8 years old at the time. But he's there.
He takes a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of your other boy, Danny, Danny graduated a few years ago. Of course, Travis graduated today, which is a really exciting time for you guys, I know.
Yes.
Is this an especially meaningful time for you and your family? I mean, in light of the Adams family tradition in Oklahoma State?
Well, yeah, it really is, and hopefully maybe that line will continue. We don't know, but when I know Danny was young, especially, we would we'd watch a game on TV, and it'd be, there's Pistol Pete, pretty soon he'd point him out to me first, there's Pistol Pete watching the game on TV or something like that. And so I never said that it was my intent for my kids to go to OSU, but I wasn't going to discourage it.
We did.
And they both made that choice.
And so I guess Danny and Travis both graduated from Eisenhower High School in Lawton.
Eisenhower, and Danny was a National Merit Scholar.
Great.
And when he came here, so that was.
Congratulations. That's
well,
exciting.
yes, and the nice part was that
great scholarship. With
great
it too.
scholarships come with that.
Well, you got to be proud of. Gosh, I was talking to Travis earlier this week, and he's carrying he got a double major, and he's carrying about a 3.8 grade point average, I think.
Yeah. I didn't know it was that low, but
so did all the is that the Adams family genes, or is that from your wife's side?
That's from my wife's side. I can guarantee you that.
Okay.
I can still remember, when I was a freshman, where they still sent out midterm grades.
Yeah.
I can still tell you that my midterm first semester was a 1.85.
But you had a good time, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I don't know. But it changed a lot by the end of the semester. So they don't send out midterm grades anymore. Probably a good thing.
Well, sort of speaking of family traditions, we're here in Walter and Diane Adams' home here in Stillwater.
Yes.
And that's sort of become a tradition, I think, now when one of the Adams family graduates, we have a pool party here at Walter and Diane's
they
house.
were so wonderful and so gracious. We just appreciate them so much, that opening their home up to us to be able to do something like this. But and again, they're great OSU people too. So that's the neat part about it. So. Yeah, and again, it was a part of the family we really didn't know until, we had that ceremony and give back that diploma. In fact, I guess Walter contacted my uncle after that ceremony. They didn't even know what was going on. We had this ceremony, and the Art Adams family and the Homer Adams family were all here. Yeah. And then Walter read about it, and then he contacted my uncle, and that's what led to the first big family reunion in Angel Fire.
And kind of put that in perspective, because we keep, rightly so, focusing on James Homer and Arthur, who were the graduates in that class 96, but they had two other brothers, Walter,
and Oscar.
And Oscar.
Yeah.
And so of course, obviously Walter Adams, that was his grandfather, so he's from that side of the family. And then the Oscar's side have like one granddaughter lives in San Diego, so that's about it, isn't it, on that side of the family?
Prim, and I think she has a son, and that's that's just one line that didn't go as far, obviously, but again, super people, great people.
Talking about your family and the reunions you've had, times you've been here at Oklahoma State, do you feel like, Steve, that Oklahoma State University has sufficiently recognized the Adams family?
Yes. I mean, gosh, they had the dining hall that was named the Adams Family Dining Hall, and during the ceremony, during the reenactment of the first graduation, and which was during one of our reunions. I just feel like they've done an outstanding job. My brother was featured in the State magazine a couple of years ago when he was working on his PhD. So,
Then you mentioned the reenactment of the class of 1896. The Alumni Association did there in Old Central, where it occurred. You said you attended that one?
Yes. It's a great day.
Did the family get a copy of that, Steve?
As far as like I know I don't have one, but it doesn't mean that other people didn't get one. My uncle might have gotten one or something like that.
Should I have a video copy of that?
Okay. Super.
As an alumnus, how do you feel about Oklahoma State University and the direction it's going? Do you feel good about it, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I work in higher education now too, so I look at things a little differently. But a lot of building going on campus, and seems to be heading in the right direction. I feel like my kids got a great education here, and that's really what it boils back down to, is getting a good education. And they were both in the honors college as well, so great honors program here at Oklahoma State. I'm real happy about that.
How do you feel about President Burns Hargis, about his presidency and his leadership?
Well, again, I'm kind of removed from it, but having known who Burns Hargis was, watching for years on Flashpoint, it seems like they're doing a good job. I'll tell you, it's got to be an extremely difficult job. There's so many, there's OSU Tulsa and OSU Oklahoma City, and there's a med school now, and the main campus here, and there's so much to be in charge of. Anyone who can juggle all of those has to be doing a good job.
Steve, you've had a chance over, you've seen your father, and then, of course, your time there, and then your sons over 3 generations to observe Oklahoma State University. And knowing the rich heritage and traditions of OSU, what values and strengths do you hope OSU will hold true to as it moves towards the future? What do you think are those foundational values that the university has?
Well, I think the most important thing is just remember to keep the students first, and it's about their education. Sometimes when universities get too big, they get a lot of parts to them, and they forget sometimes what the core value is, and that's to educate students. But yes, I mean, and OSU's has an international reputation as well, and that they've developed over the years, and it's just it's exciting. We kind of mentioned this at graduation, and you go somewhere else and you meet an OSU grad somewhere, and you feel like you met a friend. That's what's really neat. And so just being able to staying true to that to me, that core value is students coming first, and as long as they do that, they'll be fine.
There's a saying that as a graduate, as an alumnus of your alma mater, in this case of Oklahoma State University, you're sort of a stockholder, if you will. You have a stake in the future of the university. And as the university evolves, how do you think it have to? We're talking about the things it needs to hold true to. In what ways do you think the university will have to change as it emerges and evolves in the future?
Well, technology changes everything, and like most schools, I think they're doing a good job of keeping up with all that technology. And you have to give students the tools they need to succeed. Obviously, you can't. Unfortunately. As much as sometimes we think, the chalkboard's still the best method, but there's just it doesn't work as well. With students today, you've got to give them the tools that they need, and keep changing with the times. And for instance, in my area, broadcast programs and journalism programs are merging now, whereas before they were always 180 degrees apart from each other. But now we're seeing that merging because that's what the industry's doing, and so you just have to keep up
It's almost a third element in your area, and then the internet, and then you thought of radio, TV.
Yeah.
Now you really kind of intersect with.
Well, yeah,
the
that's where
internet
the
there.
journalism, newspapers have to know how to shoot. Those people have to know how to shoot video to put it on the internet, and broadcast people have to know how to write for print to put it on the internet. So, the technology is changing a lot of those things.
Stephen, reflecting back, a little bit, education has been foundational to your family through the years, and
Sure.
and starting back literally in the 1890s to the current, so more than 100 years. How do you, when you think back on Oklahoma State University, what has it meant to you and your family through, over 4 generations?
Well, it's kind of interesting that talking about education, because when my kids were growing up, it was like going to college is not something to think about. You're just going to do it. And when I was growing up, we never thought about, gee, will we go to college or not? We just thought, will we go to college? And I think that goes back to my parents, who were both college educated, and which came from their parents, who were all college educated. Whereas a lot of people don't have that sort of, where I teach, we still run into a lot of first generation college students. And so, education, it grows from one generation to the next. And I think as the university continues to grow, you look at all these people who are graduating today, their kids are going to have an expectation they're going to go to college. It's not, should I go to college? It's, where am I going to go to college?
Exactly.
And that's the only thing that's going to,
Steve, what if we talked about this earlier off camera, but it's going to be a while. It looks like there's some more Adams family members coming on. There's this sort of gap where this 5th generation comes into play.
Sure.
What would you, fast forward 10, 12, 15 years now, they're getting ready for college. What would you tell them about Oklahoma State University? Would you urge them to come to Oklahoma? When I say urge them, would you give them a
It's a
good talk
wonderful
about
atmosphere.
OSU?
It's a great campus, good atmosphere, friendly people. I think Stillwater's a great community. I like this community, and living. It's laid back. That's what I like. And some people are more into the rush kind of approach, but and you find things a little bit more laid back. People are a lot more friendly, and I think that's what makes this campus and this university special, is that even though it's a large university, you still feel like it's all family here. You don't have a lot of bad experiences when you're on campus, and that's really the nice thing about it.
What have we not talked about that you'd like to share with us about the Adams family, about your thoughts, some things you'd want to share with us?
Well, nothing comes to mind right off, other than the fact that again, I was thinking about this today. It's been 116 years or something, 14 since that first class, and here we are still talking about it. And so I just hope that people are still talking about us 50 years from now,
or another 116 years from now.
116 years from now, that'd be kind of neat too.
And it'd be needed for some Adams family there to talk about it too.
And now they can go back and look at these tapes, which is that's kind of neat too. So. No, I'm just real appreciative of the university, everything that they've done for me and my children, and just providing us good opportunities and good education, and hopefully that it'll still be here to do that for the next 3 or 4 generations. Yeah.
Appreciate you, Stephen, and again, Adams family very special to this university, and appreciate you taking time from your family celebration to visit with me.
Well, okay, thank you.